Chris Ferguson with the STS-126 crew, and you're watching NASA TV.
Barometric pressure and wind speed. Speed now 1,800 miles an hour. Approximately 2.5 times the speed of sound. Altitude is 15 miles. 67 miles to the landing site. Endeavour now passing below Mach 2, twice the speed of sound. 1,100 miles an hour, altitude 13 miles, 70,000 feet, 47 miles to the landing site.
Endeavour Houston, you're on energy approaching the hack. No changes to winds or weather. Nominal shoot deploy.
Okay, no change to winds and weather. Nominal shoot.
Hot mic, Endeavour.
Endeavour now slowing below the speed of sound. 2 sonic booms signaling its arrival at the California coast. Speed just over 500 miles an hour, 25 miles to the landing site. Commander Chris Ferguson has taken over the controls of the shuttle as he arrives at the heading alignment circle. Again, this is the 342-degree left-hand turn to line him up for Edwards runway 04, a temporary runway that is providing a southwest to northeast landing. Speed 530 miles an hour. Altitude 6 miles. 21 miles to the landing site.
Endeavour, on at the 180.
On at the 180.
Pilot Eric Bowe now getting a chance to get the feel for Endeavour as it returns from Earth to Earth. Speed 470 miles an hour. Altitude 20,000 feet.
Endeavour, on at the 90.
On at the 90.
Commander Chris Ferguson back in control. Endeavour on course past the 90-degree portion of the heading alignment circle. Lining up with runway 04, Edwards Air Force Base. Speed 400 miles an hour. Altitude 1,100 feet. Commander Chris Ferguson on glide slope. Speed 350 miles an hour. Altitude 2,000 feet. Landing gear down. Gear down and locked. Touchdown. Hot air pro deploying drag chute that'll help slow Endeavour on the runway. Nose gear touchdown. Final reveal for Endeavour's home improvement to the International Space Station mission is now complete. 124th Space Shuttle mission, 27th Shuttle mission of the station, and the 22nd mission for Endeavour.
We'll stop, Houston.
Copy, wheel stop, Endeavour. Welcome back. That was a great way to finish a fantastic flight, Fergie.
Hey, we're happy to be here in California.
Die Nachrichten bei NTV, mein Name ist Romy Arndt, ich begrüße Sie ganz herzlich. Die US-Raumfähre Endeavour ist mit 7 Astronauten an Bord sicher in Kalifornien gelandet. Um 22:25 Uhr unserer Zeit endete die 16-tägige Mission. Die Astronauten haben die internationale Raumstation für den ständigen Aufenthalt von 6 Astronauten ausgebaut und Reparaturarbeiten vorgenommen. Schlechtes Wetter in Florida hatte die NASA zum Ausweichen auf den Luftwaffenstützpunkt Edwards gezwungen. Die Raumfähre muss nun mit Millionenaufwand auf dem Rücken eines umgebauten Jumbojets nach Florida geflogen werden.
In California for the shuttle Endeavour, NASA ordered the detour after a stormy sky prevented a landing at Kennedy Space Center. The aircraft will now get prepped for its cross-country flight to Florida. That is an air ticket we most likely will never see. NASA says that Endeavour flight costs nearly $2 million to return to its home base.
Touchdown.
All right, let's see how the weather affected NASA's plans. Lola Martinez joins us from the Weather Center. Hey Lola, it was supposed to be Florida, but then California in the end.
It didn't happen in Florida due to really interesting weather conditions down where it was stormy, it was raining. And I'll show you in satellite pictures what is occurring right now, because we're having red boxes. What does that mean? Warnings and watches, and these are tornadoes, really bad weather. So it was actually good news that they were able to move into parts of the west, and conditions there in California were perfect. We saw that very smooth landing, perfect skies, high pressure, very dry conditions, and that's going to continue throughout the day today. I'm going to speak of the US because today is one of the biggest travel days, one of the top biggest days, I should say, across the United States. I think over 40 million people are expected to travel, road-wise and travel-wise in the air.
Millionen Kilometern im All ist die amerikanische Raumfähre Endeavour wieder auf der Erde zurück. Nach einem kleinen Umweg wegen schlechten Wetters musste der Shuttle in Kalifornien aufsetzen und nicht wie geplant in Florida. Die 7 Astronauten hatten die internationale Raumstation 2 Wochen lang auf Vordermann gebracht. Und bis auf einen Werkzeugkasten, der bei einem Außeneinsatz im All verloren ging, lief auch alles gut.
you doing? Thanks for coming in on a Sunday. Great to be here.
That's great. It's really nice.
Welcome.
Great to be here.
I was on NCC.
Oh, my NCC.
Well, Ted's doing most of the work, but I was talking to you there.
Good to be here. It's great.
All right.
Back, see you.
Great. Thank you. That's the guys.
Beautiful day out here at Endeavour.
Yeah, it is.
Nice day. Hey,
Welcome back.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
James, come back.
Nice machine. Nice. Good work. Good looking machine.
Sunglasses off.
A little easier doing it this way.
First, let me just say thank you to all the folks who came out to support the landing at Edwards Air Force Base today. Kind of a unique opportunity to come out and land at this temporary and narrower runway, but I think it all worked out in the end very well. Let me be the first to say that the crew members who are not with us are doing just fine. Greg Chamitoff, of course, is a 6-month space flyer, and it takes just a little bit longer for them to reacclimate to the gravity and readapt to being on Earth again. And then Don Pettit and Heidi Piper doing just fine as well. They're in keeping a good eye on Greg. So we just thought we'd take advantage of the beautiful weather to come out here and enjoy this gorgeous orbiter, which seems to have fared entry pretty well. And let me thank all the folks back in Houston and at the NASA centers throughout who went to support what I believe is an extremely successful mission. It was very ambitious. It was over 15 days long. We were the home improvement mission. We improved the space station inside and out, of course, with a new water recycling system, and then the Solar Alpha rotary joint, which Heidi and her team so adeptly managed to repair. From what I've heard, is performing very well. So again, thank you to all throughout the Edwards and NASA communities who've supported us today, and it's great to be back on the ground, and it's great to be in California. Thank you very much. All right, guys, way to go.
911 from 912.
He's rolling.
Okay, looking good.
Warning. Warning. Lift off and it looks clean. And the gear up and locked. And everything looks stable. That's pretty.
Yep.
NASA 911 Heavy, one able contact, sport, safe flight, good morning. Thank you, switch to sport, so on.
Good.
Sport NASA 911 Heavy, with chase is on 600 feet, climbing to 15,000. NASA 911 Heavy, roger, you radar contact. Your discretion, direct vector flight plan, maintain 15,000. Discretion, direct vector, 15,000, NASA 911 Heavy. Right.
Looking good, Dick.
Okay, yeah, just let me know if you want to go in or out, up or down.
911 is the case F-18 is going to stay with you. Just to the, probably the Colorado River. Right.
Yeah, Sport, I'll be coming back VFR about 30 minutes from now.
That's not level, right? But you will be with the aircraft when we leave 25:15.
Affirm.
Right.
A lot of machinery.
Okay, we need to back out just a little bit. I'm a little bit too wide.
Okay.
Don't hear me say that often. That looks good.
911 is airborne in 07 in presently out of 7,000 feet, heading towards Hector, 52 miles to go. NASA 912, NASA 911 calling. Go ahead, Bill. Yeah, we're showing 49 miles to Hector out of 7,500 feet for you guys.
Yeah, we just made the turn over Hector, Bill.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna go over to
Omaha 10, what are you on?
NASA video, NASA 852.
Yeah, this is Trident TV 852. If you guys are ready, I mean, you can go on ahead and do your move, but I need a couple seconds to let headquarters know we're about to be done.
Okay, we'll go as long as you want.
Unfortunately, the signal's breaking up just a little bit the farther you guys get out, so now's as good a time as any. Just give me a couple of seconds, and then you guys can just do slide over the top and get me out of it, and then you're off on your own.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll wait for you to clear us off, and we'll do the roll and then switch to still.
Two sport.
I got your...
Okay, perfect. Stand by.
This is Omaha 10. Good morning.
Omaha 10, you radar contact 8,300, transition through 2515 is approved, altimeter 3043.
3043 and transition 2515 approved. We'll be climbing to flight level 210.
Okay, roger. Maintain 8,500 to unit 2515. I'll reclear you up at that point. Maintain 8,500 until then.
And that's 852. This is Trident TV. You can go ahead and do your slide over the top. It would be wonderful. And Carla, just let it go out of frame if you can. I'll go to black and we'll be done.
4.7 and 132.5. Have a good flight. We'll see you later. Yeah, so 911 Heavy switching to LA. Thank you and good day. See you later, guys.
And Doug will meet you there.
I'm ready when you are. Dude.
Okay, here we go.
That was 132.5 VHF. Yes, sir. 132.5. Switching out, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Mike Curie with NASA Public Affairs, and I would like to welcome you to NASA headquarters for a very special presentation today by the astronauts of Space Shuttle mission STS-126. On a November night, last November, the astronauts, Commander Chris Ferguson and his crew, boarded Endeavour and lit up the sky all along the East Coast as they traveled from Kennedy Space Center to the International Space Station. And 16 days and more than 6.6 million miles later, at 17,500 miles an hour, they safely brought Endeavour back to Earth on the other coast at Edwards Air Force Base in California. Today they will tell us all about their accomplishments, of which there were many. They have prepared the International Space Station for the future. They'll tell us all about that. They'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And even though they're on a tight schedule today, they have graciously offered to stick around to speak with you and sign autographs. So we look forward to that. And to get things started, I would like to introduce the man at the helm of NASA during this time of transition. And he's no stranger to you. He's served as NASA's Associate Administrator and Chief Engineer and held various leadership positions for many years since 1987. He's earned many awards for his engineering and scientific expertise and his leadership skills. Please join me in welcoming NASA's Associate Administrator, Chris Scalise.
Thanks, Mike, for that introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here this morning to welcome you all to the this presentation by the Endeavour crew of STS-126. As you know, they've been very busy for more than a year. It takes a lot to prepare for a mission and to carry one out successfully, as this crew did. But it has additional accomplishments that that many of you probably don't know about that they've done since they've returned to Earth. Since arriving in Washington, they've done something that only one other NASA crew has done. They walked the 1.5 miles in the inaugural parade in that cold weather to show the flag for NASA and to participate in a historic event here in D.C. In addition, they've also been to the Washington's National Air and Space Museum, where they've spoke to students about the wonders and mysteries of spaceflight. They've also been to Walter Reed and the Bethesda National Naval Medical Center, where they visited with our injured and wounded soldiers, airmen, and Marine and naval personnel, as they've talked to them about space and the great adventure that we're on. Next week, they'll be going to the Middle East, where they'll continue to meet with the troops and tell them about what we do. Today, of course, I get to tell you all about, or get to introduce the crew. They're going to tell you all about their mission and what they accomplished. I'll just hit a few things to sort of set the stage. Of course, they went to the International Space Station, and the purpose of this mission was to prepare for a 6-person crew. They did that with great expertise. They overcame some difficulties just spectacularly and allowed us to prepare for that. They also had to service the SARJ, the solar array rotary joint that's given us some problems recently. That's now up and working, so we're very happy to have that done. And as was said, shuttle launches at night are just absolutely spectacular, and this one was no different. I want to mention one other first, and I hope he doesn't get embarrassed. Steve Bowen is the first naval officer to fly in space, so he's gone from approximately the depths of the ocean. I think, Steve, we still can't say how deep we go, all the way to the heights of orbit. So that's another first, and it's nice to see a fellow submariner finally make it into space. So with that, I'd like to introduce the commander of STS-126, Chris Ferguson, who will introduce his colleagues.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out. And thank you very much, Chris. Your hospitality, you set a wonderful stage here for us. We're looking forward to telling you all about our mission. As Chris had said, we've had a very busy week, and he alluded a little bit to our trip next week to go out and visit the troops. This will be a first-of-a-kind venture out to the Middle East to join the USO and go entertain some of our troops, and hopefully, like you said, take the news of NASA and what we do out there, and hopefully give them an opportunity to forget a little bit about where they are and entertain them with the joys of spaceflight. Without further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce my crew to you. First is the pilot, Eric Bowe. Eric is a veteran of the Air Force. He flew F-4s, flew F-15s. He was a multi-purpose person on the flight, operated the shuttle's robotic arm, and also choreographed a lot of the EVAs from inside. Next is MS-1. MS-1 is Don Pettit. Don Pettit should be no stranger to the scientific community. He is the consummate rocket scientist. If anything is broken on space, Don Pettit can certainly fix it, and he'll tell you a little bit about his exploits as we show you the video. MS-2, you had briefly met already. That would be Steve Bowen. Steve Bowen is a captain in the United States Navy. He's the first Navy submariner to venture into space. He's a nuclear-trained officer, and he went to the U.S. Naval Academy. And he was one of the 3 folks who I'm going to introduce to you who went to MIT. So between all these folks who went to MIT and the service academies, it makes me wonder how I got my job. Next is MS3. MS3 is Heidi Piper. Heidi Piper, again, an MIT grad. She was the lead EV spacewalker. Heidi and I were fortunate enough to fly together on STS-115, and I said I wouldn't go into space again unless Heidi could go with me. She did a fantastic job leading a rookie crew of 2 other EV spacewalkers, and over a course of 4 EVAs. She did a wonderful job, and all told, Heidi now has 5 EVAs to her credit. Next is MS4. MS4 was Shane Kimbrough. Shane Kimbrough is a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. He also was a combat veteran, flew Apaches for the Army over in Iraq, and he performed 2 of the spacewalks for us. Also operated not only the space station's robotic arm, but also the space shuttle's robotic arm. So again, an all-purpose member of the crew. And then finally, Greg Chamitoff. Greg did not launch with us, but Greg came home with us after having spent 6 months aboard the International Space Station. Greg, it's great to have you with us. Not often does a shuttle crew have the opportunity and the privilege of traveling around with their space station counterpart. Although we may fly on the space shuttle together, usually we end up doing a post-flight and pre-flight presentation separately. So Greg, it's been great having you with us, and great integrating you in our post-flight presentation. So without further ado, perhaps we can all take our seats, and I may take one too, and we'll get on with the show. All right, roll. As Chris had alluded to, it was a spectacular night launch. Anybody out there ever had the opportunity to watch a night launch? It is truly an awe-inspiring sight, and I understand this was no exception. Of course, our perspective was slightly different. The effects that we had as the orbiter punched through the 30,000-foot kind of a stratus layer out there were absolutely amazing. So why don't we go ahead and roll the video and we'll show you. Like most crews, we flew into the Kennedy Space Center about 3 days ahead of launch. We still fly these T-38 airplanes, which are absolutely fantastic. It's a great form of transportation. It's a great way for us to maintain our flying proficiency. In the hours leading up to launch, we wake up about 12 hours pre-launch. They get us all suited there. There's everybody with a bright smile on their face. Of course, Sandy Magnus right there, I'd like to recognize her. She can't be with us because she's actually on the space station right now. She's scheduled to come back on STS-119 here next month. There's our mystery crew member. I believe that was Steve Bowen back there. It was a beautiful afternoon during the walkout. As we had said, it was a 7:30 evening scheduled launch. That is not a retouch photo. That is just how breathtaking the sight was as the moon came up behind the orbiter. They got us strapped in plenty of time, and actually it was a very smooth count, no problems. We had a little glitch near the end. I think they found a door in the access arm that was unpinned.
Okay, Fergie, vehicle's in good shape, the weather's beautiful, and so on behalf of the entire shuttle launch team, good luck, Godspeed, and have a happy Thanksgiving on orbit.
Kudos to your team, Mike. It's our turn to take home improvement to a new level after 10 years of International Space Station construction. Endeavour's ready to go.
Copy that. Thank you, sir.
Endeavour, OTC, close and lock your visors and initiate O2 flow. That is inward. All right, we'll do it. Get a quick comm check.
Ready for the roll.
You're going to see a very interesting effect that happened in the clouds. Watch this little ring, and it was to the people that were watching it down at the launch. They said it was really spectacular, and you can kind of see it there in the video. This is an interesting perspective of the solid rocket booster. Sitting on the solid rocket booster as it separates from the external tank. And the ride, it's amazing. That occurs about 2 minutes into the launch, and it's amazing how the ride really smooths out. And now as we're continuing up to orbit, the Gs are continuing to continue. And then we hit what's called main engine cutoff, where all of a sudden you feel weightless. And here's separation right after we had that MECO main engine cutoff. And if you look at the back of the orbiter, you'll see a camera that we have installed in the aft section that's going to take some pictures of the tank, and we download those later in the day to take a look at it. Of course, once you get on orbit, you only have a few seconds to look out the window, and it's amazing. The sun comes up right away on this night launch because you see a sunrise, sunset every 90 minutes. Here the doors are coming open, and then you can see on the sides there the radiators. We got to get right into the burns for rendezvous and docking. We dock 2 days after we get up onto orbit. And we also do, on flight day 2, robotic work. You can see the arm there on the right side, and here we're repositioning the arm to look at the nose cap on the front of the orbiter. And we do inspections on both flight day 2 and then after we undock, just to make sure the vehicle's ready to come back in. We're going to show you now a scene here coming up showing us going to rendezvous and docking. Hope you like the music.
Site. I thought that I could stay there forever. I was having a great time, but have to admit that I was happy to see them. I knew they were going to be my ride home.
Capture light. Beautiful.
On the Igloo, capture confirmed.
All right. It's great for the three of us on board, Mike and Larry and I, to welcome everybody. You know, with 3 on board the space station, it's just a massive volume. It's an incredible space now, and now with 10 on board, it's going to be a lot more activity. But great to see everybody come in and see their eyes wide open as they saw how spacious the space station was now, especially with the Japanese module and Columbus up there.
We brought up this cargo container, which is passionately referred to by us folks at NASA as the MPLM. And we moved this cargo container from the payload bay of the space shuttle and berthed it onto the side of the space station using the Canadian robotic arm. And then we could open up the hatch and start to offload all these goodies that we brought on board in this cargo container. And some of the goodies included these full-size space station racks, which are about the size of a large upright freezer, and they can weigh upwards of ½ a ton. And we can move these around just using fingertip pressure and float them into place on the space station. Now, we brought up a suite of racks which together make up our advanced life support system for space station. And this starts off with a new toilet which is plumbed into a urine processing rack. And this urine processing rack can make potable water out of, well, you can figure out what it makes potable water out of. And then we brought up a new galley rack, and then output from the urine processor rack that goes into the galley rack. So together these suite of racks make up what we call the coffee machine, because it has the uncanny ability to take yesterday's coffee and make it into today's coffee. And there's some assembly required, and as any complex piece of equipment with serial number 001, it takes a while to get it going. Here we are with some of yesterday's coffee and some of today's coffee. And this is important technology when you go out into the solar system, because it's nearly an anhydrous environment, and we're going to have to be able to take care of our water. And now on orbit we also have paperwork to do, and here we are keeping track of all these items that we have to transfer.
And while Don was busy inside doing all that work with the MPLM, we had a lot of work that we had to do outside, primarily getting the Solar Alpha rotary joint back into operation. But before we got into tackling the Sarge, our first task on EVA-1 was to go out and just move some big components that we had brought up and bring back a spare nitrogen tank. So it was, for me, it was kind of neat because I got to be on the end of the robotic arm, although most of the time I was holding this big blivet, so it kind of limited how much you could look around. But then it was time to get out onto the Sarge. Had an awful lot of work to do out there, and it was very tedious work. It had to take off a cover, or took off a series of covers, removed a trundle bearing, got the grease guns out that we had to clean them up with and scrape off a lot of the debris. Because what had happened on the Sarge is the race ring where the bearing sits had a material failure, and the bearing that bearing surface was actually coming apart. It was flaking, and so that was bad because it was increasing the currents. And so we had this plan to go out there and take off every section of the race ring, and so it was something that obviously you're not going to finish that in one EVA. So we did as much as we could on EVA-1, and then the plan was on EVA-2 we were going to go back out there and do some more work. But before we did that, we had to do some prep work for the next flight, getting ready for 119, and so we just Shane got on the arm and we moved the seat of carts, just relocated them from one side to the other so that they can get the MT all the way out on the starboard side. We also did some repair work on the arm itself. It's amazing. All this equipment, has been up there. Over 10 years, we've been bringing up a lot of equipment to space station, and just like anything in your house, your car, you need to do maintenance on it. And a lot of this maintenance, are things that we just never anticipated. Very similar to, Don says when you have a one-of-a-kind, serial number 001 on the arm, then, there's things come up in orbit that you just don't anticipate. I don't think they anticipated the snares on the end of the robotic arm. That's what they use to grasp something. And that's Shane's view of, he's greasing them up and putting them back into the slots because, they managed to come out over the years. And so, lots of folks on the ground, come up with our repair plans. We work together, training in the pool, trying to get things ready so that we can go out there and do the work that we need to do.
One of the things that's not always appreciated is the amount of work that the IV does on the inside of the vehicle. You can see here that's Shane and Eric carried it for the times that Shane was outside, and they just do an incredible amount. Outside, we basically do what they tell us. So that's pretty easy. Inside, they have to keep track of what we're doing, talk to the ground, keep track of our tools and all of our equipment. So on EVA-3, when Heidi and I went out again, we basically worked all day and all night and all day and all night and all day and all night again. And this was a great opportunity. You just saw sunrise outside, and you can see how the color transitions as the sun comes up through the atmosphere and out to where we're in bright sunlight. As Heidi was talking about, this is the work that we did. You can see as the helmet cam gets in a little closer. On the top side, you can see the damaged ring, and you can see the speckling. And the debris we're cleaning up is sort of that blob of dust right there. That's one of the larger blobs, but that stuff was distributed all the way around the ring. So our job was to clean that up as best we could and then lubricate the surfaces so there's no more wear. And it seems to have worked out pretty well. One of the difficult things about working outside, in the NBL when you train, you kind of, I guess, cheat a little bit in the sense that gravity still has a vector to it pointing down. You can kind of keep things inside the bags when you put them there. That doesn't necessarily always work when you're packing bags to come back outside, in orbit. So you'll see I just put something inside there, and soon enough it'll pop back out, and I'll have to push it back in. And that's not always appreciated when we're working in the NBL. I did find, however, that working in orbit was so much easier than working in the NBL because there was no gravity. And so we came back inside after EVA-3. We still had a little bit of work to do out on the starboard Sarge, and once I finished up out there on EVA-4 with Shane, there was much rejoicing. So basically on EVA-4, we went out to the port side, got Shane set up to lubricate the entire port Sarge, in essence, by himself. He actually went out, we pulled some covers, he lubricated half of it. He went and installed a camera, and then went back out and finished lubricating it after they rotated this port Sarge. And then once we got back inside after that last EVA, you can see Shane dropped his pants real quick. He's ready to slide right out. And then shortly after that, Chris stood on my head and pushed me out because I didn't come out quite as easy as Shane does.
One of the neat diversions we had on orbit was a couple of spiders and some caterpillars that were busy trying to do what they normally do on Earth but couldn't figure out how to do it in space. But after a couple of days, the spider figured out how to make a symmetric web, and it was pretty neat. Caught a few flies, and we're keeping track of that. Don is kind of famous for some neat science demos, and here's one where he's put an Alka-Seltzer tablet in some water, and after 6 months without any soda, I was wondering if maybe this was, Diet Coke for the future in orbit. Here's a little demo spinning something around its unstable axis, which is pretty neat. And if you thought you couldn't juggle in 0G, you can. The balls don't come back. You just have to go after them.
So when we got to the space station, it's a very huge place, as you've heard mentioned, but it can also be a pretty high traffic area. So attached to node 2 here is what you're looking at. There's 5 elements attached, which is pretty amazing. So you'll see people coming out from different directions, and you'll see it looks like DC traffic here in a minute. But really spectacular place. You see Eric just working on some angular momentum, his figure skating talents there, and these are just some living in space kind of shots that we wanted to share with you. It's me riding the bike. We all try to exercise, every day. Didn't happen all the time, but we tried to do that. We had a couple of good cruise shots. This is our Thanksgiving dinner shot. So we all had Thanksgiving dinner on the shuttle middeck with the station crew as well. There's our delicious turkey and stuffing and delightful meal that we had. You see Chris being a good astronaut playing with his food. I think he had some peanuts there. And Don, as you've already heard, is quite adventurous up there. He designed this coffee cup, he called it, the 0G coffee cup, and he and Steve here are toasting, doing a few toasts to themselves, I'm sure. So Eric here is putting a patch on, and what you're about to see is some great views out the GEM windows, which were spectacular windows that they had. So flight day 13 rolled around. It was time for us to close the hatches and start heading back to Earth. So we had to make sure we got everybody on the right side of the hatch, of course, and then we undocked the next day, and I'll let Eric talk about the undocking phase.
Should have been it.
Open. Physical separation.
Okay, pedals clear.
Both open.
BLVLHL, physical sep, Houston.
So this is one of the highlights of the mission. Another highlight that we had was to undock. We undocked in the darkness, and then we time it so that at around the 600 to 700 point, we actually fly around the entire station, and then we come into sunlight just as we hit the 600-foot point. And you can see how beautiful the station looks. And one of the things I want to point out is notice the arrays are parallel, and that shows all the work that we did on the starboard sarge, which is that single array that you see on the left side of the picture there. And as we continue to fly around, got great views of the station. And one thing to note is the next flight that's coming up here, STS-126 in February, they're going to put on the final array that's going to go on the outside here. So that mission's coming up shortly. One of the neat effects is, like we talked about earlier, is we get 16 sunrises and sunsets. Here you can see the sun is setting behind the space station in the horizon just as we get ready to leave. And as we're leaving, we get, again, right back to work. We do another flight day inspection, and here's one of other, look on the left side of the picture here. You'll see a satellite get fired out that we also did. That was called PicoSat, and it's up there right now investigating solar cell technology for the future. Now it's time to get ready to come home, and it takes a while to take the spaceship that we've made into an orbital spacecraft. Now we're getting ready to be back to an aircraft so that we can land back. We were planning on going to Kennedy Space Center, and we had 2 attempts to go there, but the weather wasn't cooperating that day, so we waved off and ended up. Here's a good shot of Shane, And you can see we're setting up to go to Edwards Air Force Base. And one of the highlights is coming back, seeing Edwards from 300 miles away from the coast of California. We also landed at a runway that we hadn't gone to before, 04 left, which is an inside temporary runway, and you can see that there in the center of the picture.
Yeah, it's always interesting to come back to California. That was my first venture, but we land out there about once every year and a half due to weather or other conditions in Florida, and it seems like every time we send this really impressive sonic boom over Los Angeles, they forget the last time the shuttle flew over and did it. So there's the evening news is always interesting to watch after a shuttle landing. As Eric had said, this is a temporary runway. It's shorter and narrower, but works just great. The shuttle has actually only landed on a total of 3 different runways over the course of its entire lifetime, but it could land just about anywhere. But we had the opportunity to try this one out. I think it'll be the last time that we ever actually land there. It was a gorgeous day out there in California. We're disappointed not to get out to Florida to see our families who were eagerly waiting our arrival, but being a Sunday afternoon on military installation in California, there's a lot less hands to shake. So that's good or bad, depending upon how you approach it. And that was the conclusion to a mission that we had talked about earlier as a feat that would take the space station, which before we got there was a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home or an outpost, into what are up there now are 5 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, and a really great exercise machine that'll keep the astronauts fit. Because one of the detriments to spaceflight is the effect it has upon the human body, and it's important that we learn over the long term how to keep ourselves fit, such that when we travel to the moon, not so much, but perhaps even onto Mars someday, that we're physically fit enough to get out and walk around and explore. So again, it was what I would like to think a very successful. It was a great mission, wonderful crew. We'd like to think the space station is a little bit better off. The urine processor, from what I understand, is up and doing well. It's had its glitches over the course of the last couple months, but we're going to get, like NASA does in true fashion, we're going to get this thing working up and running to support a 6-person crew, which begins this summer. So, without further ado, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and we are more than happy to entertain, I believe, any questions at this time, or do you want to wait and break up?
No, this is great. I just wanted to ask everyone in the auditorium if you could please turn off any BlackBerries that you have to minimize any interference. No matter where you are in here, it does tend to be picked up, so that would really be helpful. And since this is on television, we have microphones and some folks bringing them around, so if you could please wait for the microphone and possibly stand up or otherwise signal clearly so that Chris can see you with the lights in his face. It's sometimes difficult to see in the back of the room.
And so, just because it's on television, we don't want you to feel shy. Please ask the questions. It's not intimidation.
Thank you very much for supporting America and our missions. I appreciate that, and I'm sure everybody else does here. But my question regards your radiation exposure. Do you have methods of recording that, and do you have a limit that you would try to achieve or stay under before you quit flying, or should I say?
Don or Ted?
Yeah, we have a sort of a lifetime limit and then a continuous exposure limit, and we have dosimeters that we carry with us the whole time. There's also dosimeters in certain places around the station because we're trying to find, where is the best place to sleep, and the best place so that we minimize the exposure. And but even over a 6-month period, it's not that much. I don't know the exact numbers for myself yet. I'm going to be finding those out soon. But we should be able to do multiple 6-month missions without it being a problem in low Earth orbit.
When you're in low Earth orbit, you're still protected by Earth's magnetosphere, which does a lot. You're outside of the atmosphere, but the magnetosphere deflects a good number of the cosmic rays and other particles, solar-generated particles. So you're still under the tender, loving care of planet Earth. However, when we go to the moon, it's going to be a completely different story. And I think my dose when I was on space station was about 10% of your lifetime dose. So I'm ready to go back to space station for 9 more times.
One thing I did neglect to mention while we're waiting for the next question is that Don was a veteran of Expedition 6, and he spent some time up there with Ken Bowersox, and he he got an unexpected ride home because, of course, he was on orbit when we had the Columbia accident. So he came home in a Soyuz, and that was a little colorful in and of itself. Perhaps he can tell you about it afterward.
Yes, I'm curious to know how much of the Earth you can see from the space station, and are you able to see like smoke coming up or patches where there have been forests decimated? And
Shane, what do you think, Shane?
You can actually see quite a bit of the Earth. You can definitely see big smokes. Don mentioned the other day, he was there when the Iraqi war kicked off, and he could see a lot of stuff coming out of Iraq, obviously. A lot of the oil fires and stuff you can see. What I really liked looking at was the thunderstorms from space. They're just really spectacular from the top view, and they're going on quite a bit all around the Earth. You don't see the whole Earth when you look out the window. You still are only 200 miles up, so we can't even see around the whole Earth. But you obviously have a better perspective than you do here, or even in flying in an airplane.
Yeah, thank you for coming today. My question is for Steve. Given your perspective as a submariner, and given the future longer voyages to the moon, to Mars, is there any advantage to being a submariner in terms of your training, your psychological makeup, or whatever, perhaps, other than the traditional pilot culture? I'm just curious if you had any impressions on that.
I'll skip the psychological makeup part. That's always a questionable aspect of the whole thing. One of the things that I've been telling people for years, and I had no proof to back it up, is that when I get to space station, the view will be better, but the food will be worse. I can now confirm that that is true. One of the things that really struck me, though, when I got to space station was the odor. It has a very distinct, not quite as intense submarine odor to it, that recycled air process that we use. I've had the opportunity, since being at NASA, working on the Regen Eclipse system, as well as some other systems that hopefully will allow us to leave low Earth orbit and continue on. And I believe that, having spent a few months underwater is probably good training for traveling further than low Earth orbit, or even staying on the space station for a while. I look forward to it someday.
Hi. At the risk of asking the world's silliest question, I'm going to go ahead and ask it. When you all say that you added bedrooms and you added kitchens, we have ideas of what bedrooms and kitchens look like. But when we look online, it's really a bunch of, aluminum and a bunch of buttons and that kind of thing. Is there anybody that's going to be looking at things from the standpoint of sort of design to make things a little bit more friendly and pretty and that kind of thing as you start building things on the moon?
The short answer to that question is no.
That's not true.
Go ahead.
The living quarters that we installed were, actually we spent a lot of time looking at how to put those together to make them very habitable. They're actually far more comfortable than what we had on submarines as far as the actual space that you have for your own privacy. And so the crew quarters are very nice. And you're limited in what you can do with a kitchen, in essence, or even privacy as far as a bathroom by the construction of the station. But yet, we spend a lot of time looking at habitability and how to make it more comfortable and more accommodating for longer visits. I don't know which.
I'd just like to add, when Sandy was going up, she knew she'd be up on station for at least 3 to 4 months. And so she took some pictures with her, and she got them kind of blown up to somewhat poster size, and they were just outdoor scenes. She had one picture of a middle of a forest, and then there was another one with the mountains and the meadows. And she took that up there because she wanted something to remind her of Earth, so that her surroundings were a little less laboratory-like and stark. But it really does get to be up to individual crew members, and you are extremely limited on how much you can bring up with you.
Would understand. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm just curious on the coffee. Who took the first drink?
Our task was to install and sample the water, not not orally. We brought some samples back for testing on the ground. And from what I understand, by the way, those first samples came back to be as pure, if not more pure, than municipal drinking supplies. So it was working great. Don,
I think the engineers that designed the equipment should be the first ones to sample.
Hi, how are you doing? I love NASA, first off. And I want to thank all of you for everything you've done. I'm wondering, though, what is the most difficult thing you've had to adjust to, you know, leaving the Earth and going into space? I mean, it could be the simplest thing, but what did you find most difficult or hard to adjust to?
I think it takes everyone a few days. You know, everyone on the crew takes a few days just to kind of get used to the space environment. There's just getting used to the, you know, floating around. If you've been there before, you readapt a little quicker because you remember things a little bit faster. This was my first flight, so, you know, it just takes a little while to kind of get all your systems up and running, you know, sleeping. And probably one of the harder things on a shorter mission like a space shuttle mission is just the clock. We have a couple different clocks that we're working on, and you go up there with the sunlight, sunrise, sunset. It takes a little while, but usually by the end of the day you're tired. But usually you're looking at your clock going, I'm going to bed, and, you know, 2 hours when the schedule says you're going to bed, that's when, you know, lights go out and everything makes it. So I would say that's probably one of the tougher things to adapt to. And I imagine Greg can probably attest, as you get up there for a longer period of time, you get, you know, kind of more onto a cycle and get more used to it. But we were constantly kind of shifting our schedule a little bit, and so I found us looking at the our schedule, we call it the flight plan, and then looking at my watch to figure out what I was doing next.
Yeah, there's some interesting things. You know, I think one thing is getting used to the, you know, floating. It becomes absolutely normal after a while, and you start realizing that gravity is an option, and, you know, this amount of gravity is an option. And that becomes normal, and you start wondering what it's like, you know, going to be like to come back to gravity after a while, and it just seems like that's going to be really strange. And it was very strange coming back to gravity, and it takes a lot of getting used to when you come back. But also there's paradoxes. You know, you're in an enclosed volume. For me, you know, obviously for a long time, and you have this spectacular view of nature out the window, just the most amazing view of nature, but you can't interact with it directly. And the other thing is you're probably interacting with more people than you ever have in your whole life, but you don't see anybody. You know, a lot of times talking to the ground or doing, you know, some kind of event with a large audience, and you're standing in a room by yourself. So there's some interesting things that you have to get used to, but it's a lot of fun.
If I can just add, I didn't even tell Taz about this, but I noticed something about Greg as soon as we got into the space station. You're getting used to zero-G, and you're very tentative. You're very cautious. You don't want to bump into anything. You don't want to hit anything. You don't want to conk your head. And the same is even more true when you get into the large volume inside the space station. You can actually get trapped in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you can get so you can't reach anything. So you're a little cautious. You don't want to do anything like that. You know, you don't want to break anything. But what amazed me within an hour of showing up on the space station, just watching Greg fly around there like Tarzan. I mean, he knew exactly where all the handholds were. He knew exactly where he could swing and fly. And I mean, he would get to the front of the back of the station, you know, in a quarter of the time that would take any of us. But by the time we left, I think a lot of us got a lot more comfortable working around an environment like that. But there's a lot of interesting effects that you have, and you see people evolve over the course of a couple weeks operating in space. And then, of course, you have to erase it all when you come back to Earth because you're back to a two-dimensional world again. And that's interesting in and of itself. That's it. All the brave ones have asked their questions on television. All the rest of you are waiting until we're done. Here we go.
Well, I thought I would give Don a chance to wax eloquent and go back to his Expedition 6 experience. And what I thought, Don, at your event down in Houston, you told a story about what it meant when you knew you were home, that I thought was just a great statement and a great statement for us as we continue as an exploration culture.
Home, you know, the definition of being home depends on how far away you have traveled. If you go out to dinner, you might consider yourself home when you pull in your driveway. If you go out to the state park, you might consider yourself home when you arrive at the city limits of your town. If you go on one of these memorable family vacations where everybody's piled in a car for 2 weeks and driving all around, you might consider yourself home when you cross your state line. And then if you go on foreign travels on airplanes, gone for a few days to a few weeks, you consider yourself home when you first touch down in the United States. It might be in New York, it might be in Seattle or Miami. You might be 2,000 miles away from your real home, but there's something inside of you that says, I am home. Well, we were on space station for 5.5 months in Expedition 6, and we landed in the middle of Kazakhstan, almost halfway around the Earth from where home was, but we felt like we were home as soon as we went thump, roll, 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 thump. We felt like we were home. And extrapolating this to the future, which NASA has a large stake in, I can see when crews are coming back from Mars, they'll inject themselves into some type of a orbit or path next to Earth, and they'll look down at planet Earth and say, we are home.
Thank you and congratulations. I'd like to just ask if you would share a little bit more about your itinerary for your overseas tour, what prompted that, and where your schedule takes you next week.
This came up, I would say it was first suggested about 6 months ago, and I'm not really sure who exactly the seed was, but they brought it up to the crew, and we thought it was a good idea. 6 of the core shuttle crew are all active duty military, so if there was ever an opportunity to do something, I guess we thought it was this would be the opportunity. As to where we're going, we'll be leaving Monday. We're going to Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, which is just south of Russia and above. I'm learning where all these places were. I didn't know where they were, and above, I believe, Turkmenistan, and it's the prime entry point for troops that are headed into northeastern Afghanistan. And then I believe we're headed to Bagram, but we really don't know our exact itinerary when we get there. And I'm sure along the way we'll have plenty of opportunities to entertain the troops. This is being sponsored by the Armed Forces Entertainment Organization, which is the parent organization of the USO. So we're going to join the USO tour. I'm not really sure if we meet the criteria of Bob Hope or even the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best to entertain our troops while we're over there. We'll finish up in a place called Doha, Qatar, which is it's in the Persian Gulf, and then we'll head back to Ramstein, Germany. We'll visit some of the military hospitals there before we head back to the States. We'll let you know how it all goes when we get back. I think it's a worthwhile venture, not only to get the message for NASA out there, but also to give a little back to our service members who've been serving overseas, sometimes in arduous locations and over different times of the year, like winter, it's very cold out there, so we're prepared for some cold weather.
Good morning. We appreciate all you do. I have a question, maybe a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Sleep. When you guys sleep, are you floating?
Yes, you are floating. And that is probably one of the hardest things that I found about being in space was trying to sleep. Because I'm the type of person, when I go to bed, I like to put my head on a pillow, I like to curl up with my blanket, and have that feeling of the pillow on one side and the blanket on the other side. And in orbit, we have sleeping bags. And the sleeping bags were designed for you to just have your arms out and just float in a neutral position. And I found on my first flight, the first night I tried that, my arms got cold, and I don't sleep on my back, so I was like, there's no way this is going to work. And so then you try to be creative with what you have. And the sleeping bag does have a pillow. I guess that's what they call it, but it's about this big, and I think it's just a little bit softer than the table. But there's a strap on it. And so what I found, and I know a lot of the guys did the same thing on this mission, is that they would just cinch it down as tight as you could make it. And if you wedge your head in the corner, you could feel like your head's on a pillow. So, okay, that solved one problem. And then the next one is, okay, how do you deal with the, curling around with the blanket? Because, like I said, for me, there was no way my arms were going to, just do this and, okay, I'm asleep. That wasn't going to work. And so then I just took all the excess material that's in this bag and kind of wrapped it up and wrapped it around my arm. And so if I wedged my head and wrapped it around, and then you had two other straps. One was kind of about thigh level, and one was down by my feet, and I could pull my knees up and rest it at one strap, and then wedge my feet in by the other strap. You kind of get into semi-fetal position, and it was like, okay, now this feels a little bit more like a bed, and I could sleep. And that was the best way that I found that I could sleep in space.
The other thing, just to kind of add to that, Heidi slept on the same wall that I did on the middeck. She slept facing with her head facing down towards what would be the floor when you walked onto the middeck on the ground, and I had my head facing the opposite direction. And the middeck is a fairly small area. It's probably the size of a small closet, and they had all 7 of us down there on the middeck sleeping. So you can put us in all different orientations, and people are on the walls, with kind of like a hammock in the middle, and back behind some bags. So, I mean, there's all kinds of places to sleep, so it's a pretty interesting sight. On the ground, even as you're training for the first time, it doesn't seem like you can sleep that many people in one small area in the shuttle, but it works.
The only time it's tough is when someone has to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night.
Hello, my name is Stephanie, and I'm from California. I'd like to commend you guys first on being able to be in such tight quarters, because I just can't even stand being in the elevator for over a minute. But I'm curious to know about the effect of the non-gravity situation when it comes to urinating and relieving yourselves. Can you just kind of explain that? I know it's a little, it might seem like a weird question.
This is actually the eternal question. This is a very famous question. Did you have something else you wanted to add, or you ready?
No, I'm dead serious about that. How does that work?
Great. Well, when you gotta go, you gotta go. And it takes a while when you first get up in space for everything to work properly and adapt. Probably for me, I think in about 5 days, your body kind of figures out what has to happen. But your bladder has, of course, pressure on it, and the systems we use air suction with a fan, basically, instead of water, and it works really well. In fact, the Russian, of course, when I launched, you probably remember hearing that the Russian toilet was broken. So when I got there, I was wondering whether or not we're going to have a very hard time with all of this, that there was actually consideration of whether we should just bring everybody back if we can't fix it, but anyway, you get used to it. Takes a little while, and then you have to get used to it again when you come back down. It's different again back in 1G.
I think one thing that we all recognize once we get up there is what an integral part gravity plays in the digestion process. And when it's not there anymore, you appreciate it.
Okay, I have a question. Do you have dreams when you're there? Do you ever dream of coming home?
Anybody have any dreams? As Heidi said, sleep is a real issue, and sleep is something that you kind of get. You take it when you can get it, and I think the dreams come when you're well rested, or at least dreams that you remember. So personally, I can't even recall a dream I had up there.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Tuan. I can't remember if I had. I slept really well actually up there, but I can't remember dreaming.
When Garrett was here and he had, been on the station for a while, he was saying that he had a dream. He dreamt of coming back home, so that's why I was wondering, do you even have dreams?
When I'm down here, I'll dream about flying. And ironically, this was on Expedition 6, where you have maybe a little more time to dream in your sleep, I guess. But I would dream about walking when I was on space station.
I had enough time up there to get very comfortable sleeping, and was, had lots of dreams. And I think it was interesting because maybe 4 months into it, and I started dreaming about being back. And I would dream that I was back, I was walking around, I was having meetings, about the flight, but no one seemed to pay any attention. And then I would remember, gee, I can't remember anything about the return. I don't remember anybody bringing me back. I don't remember the shuttle, flight that I went back on. And then I'd wake up and I'm still there. So that was.
Hi, this question is for Heidi. Is it strange? It's a twofold question. Is it strange being the only girl? And then is there any plans for an all-girl mission?
For me, it was not strange being the only girl. And I think part of that is because I grew up with 4 brothers, so I didn't have any sisters. So I was kind of just used to the fact that I was around all these guys. I got my degree in mechanical engineering, and I went to college back in the early 80s, and so back then there were not a lot of women in technical fields. And then I went into the Navy, and I went to Navy dive school. And so out of my dive school class, there were 2 women, just one other. And I don't think I've ever been on a dive job with another female. So I think that just the things that have happened, that I've always just been around guys, and so it didn't bother me that I was with all these guys. It was kind of nice to have Sandy, at least together for the first couple of days. So that part of it was a nice, but it was something nice to have, but not a requirement. And it would be interesting to have an all-female crew. I think right now we don't quite have the right makeup in the office to do that. And I'd almost be afraid that if we did put together an all-female crew, it would almost be such a publicity stunt that I don't think anybody would want to be on that flight.
We may be running out of time in questions. If you're thinking of any more, let me just take a moment to recognize our station crew still on board. Of course, I mentioned Sandy that we took up there. Mike Fink was the station commander, and Yuri Lonchkov was the Russian counterpart. Mike was integral to making our mission a complete success that it was. He took care of everything for us. It was all prepared, all ready to go. He's been up there since, I want to say, October, aggressively putting together the pieces of the pie that we took up for him, and they're doing a fantastic job up there right now. He'll be home, I believe, sometime in March. So, again, an integral part to the thing. And also, I'd like to be able to take everyone with us and show you what your tax dollars pay for. If you think science fiction is just science fiction, it's not. It's science fact. To be in one spacecraft 600 feet below another spacecraft, each of them weighing over 250,000 pounds. I mean, these are huge things in space that we put up there. It's a tremendous testament to the commitment that our nation has to staying permanently in space, and a commitment to our partner nations who are willing to do these kind of things and dream very bold things. I'll tell you, if I could capture one moment and bring it back and keep it forever, it would be that one moment where you look out above the space shuttle and you see the space station before we begin this pitch maneuver. It's just absolutely an incredible structure that we are building up there. It's gorgeous, it's massive, and it's highly successful, and it's been home to people for the last 8 years, and it will continue to be for the foreseeable future. So I think that you at NASA all have I have nothing but respect for the folks who have put this whole thing together. I'm looking forward to seeing Constellation come alive and well, and us go once again beyond low Earth orbit and back to the moon.
Thank you and your crew for being here with us today and sharing your experiences with us. It was very awesome. We very much appreciate it, and thank you also for agreeing to stick around afterwards and meet the folks in the auditorium and sign autographs. The crew's on a very tight schedule, but they have a few minutes that they'd like to spend with you. And thank you all very much for being here today. For more information on shuttle mission STS-126 and all of NASA's missions, you can go to our website at www.nasa.gov. Thank you very much.